Hey guys, Buff and Game back today, bringing a video, and today we're going over Modern Warfare 2 weapon, a little bit of theory crafting here regarding what kind of AK variants we could see in the AK vault packs. So far we know very little about vault packs, but what we do know is we do have an M4 vault pack, which you do get from pre-ordering certain versions of the game, which I did in fact get, so I can jump in right away and see what those are. We did a breakdown video here on the channel for all weapons in the original trailer, as well as the gameplay trailer, which we got for this game, breaking those down. So in the trailer, the original trailer video, the reveal trailer, I broke down everything in that vault pack that we could see as far as weapon conversions. We had things like the M4 5.7, which is essentially M4 platform firing top with an upper receiver swap, so you get the P90 magazine. It fires the 5.7 from the P90. So crazy weapon conversions from that we're going to get on the M4. And I'm assuming what vault packs are going to be is different, almost full unlocks of a lot of the different conversions and parts you would get from naturally progressing your weapon. But again, we don't know anything really about vault packs. We just know what we saw with the M4 vault pack gave us a lot of different conversions based off on the small screenshot that we were able to see for the promotional material. So in this video, we're going to break down my predictions for the AK vault packs, if there is such a thing. Regardless, whether it's a vault pack or not for the AK, this is going to be a prediction video for what kind of AK conversions and variants we're going to have in Modern Warfare 2. So I'm assuming there's going to be an AK vault pack, but even if there isn't, this is what I'm assuming is going to be in the game. I think it's a safe bet based on things that we've seen in the trailer, things that we've seen from other weapons in the game, that it would make sense, especially coming out of what AKs we've had in previous Call of Duty games prior to Modern Warfare 2019, as well as in Modern Warfare 2019, as well as what's going on in the real world right now, what kind of AKs we'll be getting. So I'll go through this list. Now, hopefully I'll hit everything, but there is going to be some weapons that may be Ukrainian in origin, which we won't include on this list because it doesn't fall specifically within the original AK origin of the weapon. So jumping right into here, what we're going to start with, I think at base, it's probably safe to assume what we've seen in the trailer so far as AKs. We've seen an AK-105 and an AKS-74U. I'm going to go ahead and just guess here that we'll just say for the purpose of where we're going to start with this video, this could be completely wrong, but I'm going to guess the base AK is probably going to be a 105, but for this video, I'm going to say we're just going to go with an AK-74M, which is essentially a 105, just a longer barrel version of it. Again, it's an AK firing 5.45 by 39 millimeter, longer barrel than a 105. So it's your standard AK. We're able to make the AK-74M via blueprints in Modern Warfare 2019, but M standing for modernized. So this is going to be an AK-74, but an M, or modernized, meaning the wooden portions of the weapon, which would be the wooden buttstock, handguard, things like that, are fully replaced and modernized with polymer. So you have a polymer buttstock, handguard, and as well as different materials for the magazines in most cases too. So we're going to start with an AK-74M. Again, this is a standard barrel length AK firing 5.45 by 39 millimeter. I'm going to also assume here that we'll be able to convert this into a AKMN, or a modernized AK-47, for example. AKM came in the 1950s after the 47. The MN being more modernized, and the N standing for, it does have the dovetail mount on there. And again, that's a highly customizable weapon. The MN may or may not be included. It wouldn't make sense based on the other ones I'm going to have here on this list, but I wanted to throw it out there because I'm guessing we'll be able to make it with small minor adjustments to different things like that. So starting with the AK-74M, what could we make off of that? The AK-105, obviously, we've seen this in the trailer. AK-105 is the AK-74M, just with a shorter barrel. I believe it comes in at about 12.4 inches for a barrel length. So that's going to be a shorter barrel AK-74M, again, firing 5.45 by 39 millimeter. Then we're going to have also a 104, that being the exact same as a 105, just firing instead of 5.45, it's going to be 7.62 by 39 millimeters. So that's your bigger 7.62 caliber versus your 5.45. And then an AK-101. This again is a short barrel, 12.4 inch barrel variant. The 101 firing 5.6 by 45 NATO. So we're going to say we'll start with the AK-74M, shorter barrel version of this. So this would just be a minor change with the vault pack or attachments just for a barrel length. And then you'd be able to make, based on the magazine that you put in there, the ammo type or the caliber would be a 105, 104, 101. Those are all the same barrel length, just firing different rounds, okay? So next up, the AK-103M. So the AK-103M is also going to be the same barrel length as the AK-74M. I want to say it's 14, probably 16 inches, I think is the standard AK barrel length. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we'll just say 16 for the purposes of this. So this would be, again, probably just a barrel length change. You'd have your standard barrel length. However, it's going to be firing 7.62 by 39 millimeters. So this is the AK-103M is a modernized version of the AK-MN. So AK-103M would be essentially the same as the AK-74M, just with, again, a different ammo type. So you can see the small variations we can make here. We've made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, essentially 5 to 6 different AK builds just with a different barrel length, one different barrel length, and different ammo types. So very small nitpicking items here, but these are very different AK builds, and you can do a lot of different customization off those, which we'll get into. Now, we'll have the AK-103M, and then we'll have the AK-102. This is going to be, again, the same barrel length as the 103 and the 74M. We're going to say it's 16 inches, and that's going to be firing. The 102 is going to be fired 5.56 by 45 millimeter NATO. So again, another version just with a different ammo type and barrel length swap there. Next up, we're going to go to the same barrel length. We're going to go with the 107, the 108, and the 109. So the 107, 108, and 109. The AK-107 does have what is referred to as, I believe it's the counterbalance recoil system, or not counterbalance. The Russians refer to it as something a bit different. It's the, we'll call it the counterbalance for the purpose of this video, but essentially they're the same thing. So what it is an equal and opposite reaction. Essentially, when the weapon fires, there's a counter pulley which moves in opposite. That way it's, again, countering the recoil. So you have, instead of just the bolt hitting the rear and causing that recoil, you also have a pulley pulling to the front, so you have an equal in opposite direction force hitting at the same time. So this weapon has literally zero recoil. It's the only reason it wasn't adopted as a main service rifle for Russia is because it had a hard price point to it. It was a highly expensive weapon, complicated interior for the weapon again, and then they referred to it as a balanced recoil system. Counterbalance is the same thing. So a balanced recoil system. The 107 and 108 and 109 are all the same, just again firing different calibers. So the 107 was 5.45 by 39 millimeter. The 108 was the 5.56 by 45 millimeter, and the 109 being 7.62 by 39 millimeter. That being the bigger caliber weapon there. So again, barrel length the same. Just this would be an upper barrel change though, or an upper receiver change, I guess we'll call it for the purpose of this AK. So you would swap out, because the barrel assembly and all the internals are different for this. So where this differs from the previous AKs is that it would be similar to what we saw with the Cinder M4 Vault Pack. This would be an upper part of the weapon changing out. So essentially your lower receiver would be the same, just compatible with different calibers or magazine types. And then the upper part of this would be different from everything we discussed so far, because the interior and the workings of the weapon are completely different, as well as there's a visible difference with the balanced recoil system. You can see the housing on the barrel, which we'll get into when this game comes out, and if they do have this, we'll get into in depth with it. But you can see, if you look at the 107, you can see the minor differences on this weapon. This also has an increased rate of fire. It's around 850 to 900 rounds per minute, where your standard AK in any caliber is going to be basically 600 to 650. So a very higher rate of fire in full auto, as well as zero recoil on this thing, makes it a really awesome looking weapon, which I would love to have in this game. And again, this would be one of those upper receiver changes, as well as swapping out the different ammo type or the caliber type based on which version or variant you want to make. Next up would be the AK-200 series. So the AK-200 series is essentially what was supposed to be the original AK-12 as far as the interiors of this thing. The AK-200 was not formally adopted. The original AK-12 model of the early, I think it was 2011, 2012, when it was conceived, that model was eventually rejected, but the AK-200 series is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's just an upgraded version of the 100 series. So you have the 201, 202, 203, 204, all of that, the same exact as the 100 series. This would just be minor differences. Again, I don't really suspect we'd have these in the game, but you very well could. And these could come with different Zenitco type attachments on them, more modernized furniture, which we'll get into here in a little bit. So skip ahead. whether it is or is not AK200 series, there should definitely be AK400 series, and this is what we know now as the modern, the newest iteration of the AK12 platform. So that being the AK12, again, this would be again, probably a complete lower change and an upper change, I would assume, based on how they want to do this, how in-depth they get with the customization and the gunsmith. But the AK-12, again, is firing 5.5 by 39 millimeter. The AK-15, the same as the AK-12, but it's firing the 7.62 by 39 millimeter. And then you have the AK-19, which the same exact weapon, just firing 5.56 by 45 millimeter NATO. So that platform is the same. That would just be essentially the lower receiver swap and some internal swaps to change the caliber type. They won't get that in depth. It'll just be put on this different caliber magazine probably. Next up, we have another change here, that being the RPK 74 and the RPK 16. So the RPK 74 would be similar to the AK 74 or the 74M, just a different barrel on that, different handguard, so you'd have some differences there. Potentially even a different lower. And then the RPK 16 would be, again, another variant of the AK-12. This would be another upper change, most likely, similar to the AK-12, but a longer barrel, slightly different looking handguard and assembly. And again, this is essentially what was the original quote-unquote like SAW type support gunner light machine gun roll. But again, it's not belt fed. It is still magazine fed light machine gun, the RPK 16 and the RPK 74. Next up, one we didn't mention yet, but we do know is in the game, is the AKS 74U. We did see that in the gameplay trailer for that Dark Water mission. The AKS 74U, again, this is going to be another AK-74, AK-74M, just with a shorter barrel, and you'd have a different handguard option on there as well. It would also be really cool to have the AK-9. I'm assuming will most likely be in this game. The AK-9 is going to be an upper and a lower swap. This is going to be firing 9 by 39 millimeter, same as the AS Val and the VSS Venturas. So the AK-9, this is still an AK platform, whereas the AS Val, Venturas, the SR3 are not AK platform. They're similar, but it's not an AK, whereas the AK-9 is still a shorter barrel AK with obviously different, it's firing 9 by 39. So it is still the same platform, but obviously a different weapon. Those are all the variants that I can think of off the top of my head that I would like to see, that I'm assuming would be in the vault pack. Now, there's another layer to this, though, because with the M4 vault pack, we did see a lot of more modernized handguards. Things like we saw the Stanley Arms Industry Gray Rifle handguard. We saw the 50 cal Beowulf handguard and barrel assembly there. So with that, I'm going to also assume we're going to get handguard options as far as when we get into cosmetics. So whether or not this is locked in with the barrel or it's something you update with it would be a bunch of Zenitco type updates to it. So what is Zenitco? Zenitco is basically your third-party manufacturer, the only one in Russia that I'm really aware of, which makes third-party attachments for the weapons. Think about your M4 platform AR-15s. There's a bunch of different companies here in the United States which create different handguards and a bunch of different customization options that you can get to really Franken-Smith your own weapon when you're building your own weapon. In Russia, there's really only one company, again, that I'm aware of coming right out of Russia, that being Zenitco. And Zenitco, again, they create all the modern-looking AKs. If you've been paying attention to the war in Ukraine right now, you may have seen a lot of Ukrainian soldiers as well as even Russian soldiers, specifically the Spetsnaz GRU units that we've seen operating in Ukraine with very modern-esque looking AKs. They're not, a lot of them aren't even running AK-12s. They're just running AK-74s that are kitted out with a bunch of Zenitco attachments. So what are Zenitco attachments? Basically, they have customized, you just swap up every attachment on the weapon for the most part. You have different buttstocks that go on there. Something like a PT3 buttstock, you would take off the buttstock from typical AK-74, and this would be a different type buttstock you could put on there. You have things like RK3 pistol grips, RP1 charging handles, B10M lower receivers or lower handguards. These again have like the Picatinny type rail systems on them for more modularity to the weapon. You have different foregrips like RK0, RK1, RK2, RK3, etc. You have different laser lights that can go on there. You have B19 upper handguards, which again rail option for more modularity. And And then you also have things like different muzzle brakes and B33 receiver cover, which is a railed dust cover, which goes on the top of the AK to mount optics on the Picatinny instead of having a dovetail mount, and things like B5 rails, which would replace where it's essentially you'd have some of the optics on there, so you could again put another Picatinny mount to mount your optics. So there's a variety. If you guys just check out like Zenitco.com, they make these for not only AKs, they make them for the PKM, PKP Pecheneg. But if you're familiar with the Alpha AK, the weapon that Larry Vickers made very popular a couple years back, this is really what we see a lot of the Spetsnaz units running as. An Alpha AK is basically what it sounds like, an Alpha Spetsnaz Alpha Guru type AK, which they're kitting these things out with a lot of different Zenitco attachments, as well as some other attachments that they're actually kitting out of, I think, the United States at the time. But very nice looking AK. Some other things that are honorable mentions here would be the Kochevnik Zenitco AK Bullpup series. So the Kochevnik is a conversion kit for the AK-74, AK-10, and the AK-105, 104, 101 shorter barrel versions of the weapon. The Kochevnik Zenitco AK Bullpup converts this weapon into a bullpup weapon. So you essentially have a conversion kit. You take the AK apart, convert some things, and you have a customized chassis which goes on it, and you have what is a bullpup AK. So it'd really be cool to see that as an option here in the game as well. You could also see things like maybe the SMAR 100 BPM. Again, this is another. We have other versions of the like the 100 series 103 type bullpups, for instance, 2x39mm. We saw something like that featured in Medal of Honor Warfighter as a 103 bullpup. So we have a lot of these things here which could be making their way into the game. Let me know your thoughts down below, what you think of that. Again, I left out some of the Ukrainian type weapons. The Ukrainians have like the MWII, which again is essentially a bullpup AK, but that's not really an AK platform. Definitely not a Russian specific weapon, so I wanted to leave it out of this and just mention the AK platform weapons. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know what kind of weapons you want to see in the AK Volt Pack for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Till next time, Buffner Gaming out.